In the 5 degrees of Taurus, numbered 11 to 15, the expression of the energy of Taurus is called application. So the power that developed in the first 5 degrees became effective by training that power towards doing good in the second batch of 5 degrees. Now in the third batch of 5 degrees, we see how this needs to be applied. We have to learn application. It's not enough just to have power and optimize it by serving the good. We have to make it apply to some real situation in the world. So we start to understand this in the first image of this batch, the 11th degree of Taurus. This is the woman sprinkling flowers, and it's the image of care. Now, the previous degree, the Red Cross nurse, has already given us a lot of information about care. So what's the difference here with the woman sprinkling flowers? And I think what we're talking about here is taking that level of sacred service to a new level where we care for a particular thing in its long-term implications. We're not just immediate and urgently responding to an obvious need that's calling our attention. We go beyond that and we take the initiative to do something. The flower, in the moment that it's being watered, doesn't need water. Not yet. If you actually are watering a flower that needs water, you've left it too late. It's just like if you feed a child only when it cries for food, well, you've left it a bit late, you know. So stewardship is the energy where we are so tuned in to the object of our caring attention that we can anticipate their needs and provide them before the need becomes poignant. So the flower is not going to die. It's going to be watered before that happens. The child is not going to cry. You feed it before it gets hungry, and so on. Now, on one level, we can actually talk about things out there, caring for a garden or a classroom if you're a teacher or whatever. We can put it out there. But of course, on the most subtle level, this is to do with self-stewardship as well. We have to just become so aware of ourselves and what we need in the complete sense. I mean, you can think about how complex a human being is. All of the physical body, all of the psychological, emotional, mental issues, and then our spiritual side as well. There's such a lot to deal with. And to bring this level of attention to oneself inevitably is going to echo out in the world. There isn't a better way to serve the world than to serve yourself. And so to take care of all of your needs. If you don't take into account the spiritual side of this, then you haven't done the job. You know, we need to take care of the physical body. Of course, we need to train to some extent. We need to keep fit. We need to feed ourselves properly and all of that. We must do that. We need to keep our mind free of anxiety and confusion and fear, and keep our heart clear and free of resentment and jealousy, and you know, not tarnish the heart with negative energies. And we need to keep our spiritual body tuned up through meditation and prayer and conscience, being of good conscience. And just shape ourselves into a self-loving steward of the whole system, so that we can actually take care of something in the world in the same diligent way. This is a high level of consciousness being brought to bear, where we bring spiritual reality and apply it to ourselves and the world. The upshot of that is not to... let's put it this way, we must not give up personal desire in all of this. The window shopper's image in Taurus 12 is all about, yeah, I'd like one of those, I'm looking at something in the future. That's what I desire, I desire this. It's a good energy. It's in balance with the previous one. It's not okay to give up all of your personal desires when you're on a spiritual journey. And I think this has sent a lot of people in the wrong direction. The last 2,000 years has been marked by the whole idea that self-denial is a spiritual principle. And it's just not really worked, has it? It's not true, and it wasn't thought that that was the case in ancient times. If you go back to the early days of the development of religion in India and the Middle East and so on, these ideas were just not present. Of course you have desires and you do what you can with them. It's just a question of balancing them. So in this case, we're saying not too spiritual. Yeah, what do you want? Have a look around, see what you'd like to achieve in the world. Because desire is a spiritual quality, and it's a motivating quality. The motivation to actually be creative, to make changes in the world, is a requirement. If you don't have the motivation to do something, then you won't do it. You won't do it well. You won't do it in a joyful way anyway. And the motivation is inevitably tied up with our desire. So we've got this counter-distinction between wanting to be at the highest level of sacred service as a steward on the one hand, but on the other hand, also being quite happy to fulfill our desires, our own selfish desires. And we have to try and find some reconciliation for these two contradictory principles. And we find in the third image of this expression, Taurus 13, the porter, the man carrying heavy bags. What happens when we fulfill our desire nature with this high degree of spiritual power is that we collect things. We have lots and lots of things because we enjoy abundance. And that's not wrong in itself, but they're heavy to carry. And we could extrapolate that into the idea of being able to do things and have lots of friends and lots of interests and having a very, very rich life. All of that is, to some extent, a responsibility that has to be carried. It's a weight. Our lives can be as rich as we want them to be and as abundant as we want, except where the responsibility for maintenance of that weighs too heavily upon us. So we have to match our responsibilities with our capacity. We can't take on too much responsibility than we can handle. We have to be a bit careful about that. And so the third thing we have to learn when it comes to the application of our power into the world is to be reasonable about that. Don't go too far. Don't try and bite off more than you can chew. Balance, reasonableness, moderation, these kind of principles. In the image of Taurus 14, the shellfish grouping and the children playing on a beach, bit of a strange image. And what is understood here is that the balance that we've referred to in the porter image is applicable as much in terms of work and play as in everything else. Now the children are playing and they have no responsibilities at all, and they're enjoying life and they're creating light by being joyful and free. Whereas the shellfish are groping around looking for food, doing the work necessary to kind of survive, So you've got this distinction between the survival demands, we have to take care of ourselves here on Earth, look after our food needs and our shelter and take care of the kids, do all that heavy, responsible sort of stuff. And remember that that's not okay by itself. That needs to be balanced too. And that needs to be balanced with this joyful playing on the beach that children are demonstrating. So the image that we're looking at is how to apply the power. And we found that stewardship, anticipating the needs of what we care for, has to be balanced with personal desire, what we want for ourselves. And we have not to take on too much of a responsibility, only as much as we can handle. And remember to balance work and play. It kind of comes out of the third one, but it's much more obviously the case that it's not just resisting too much responsibility. That's half of it. The other thing is actually having fun. There's a spiritual wisdom in fun and play and the innocence of children. And then we come to the final degree here, the 15th degree of Taurus. And we understand this is the image of the muffled man in a rakish silk hat. He's muffled, and the scarf around his neck and his mouth to protect him from the elements. There's a storm. He's out in the rain and the snow, and he's guarding himself against the storm, weathering the storm. And yet, this silk hat, this rakish silk hat, he's a snappy dresser. And the image here is the ability that we can develop to cope with storms, cope with life's difficulties, which always come, guaranteed. And to do that with grace and style. That's the application of our power. We've made our power effective, and we've applied it into the world such that we can actually cope with everything that comes to us with grace, with elegance, not put out of, having our nose put out of joint by unexpected events. This demonstrates a high degree of mastery when we can just deal with what comes up with an easy ability. We don't get confused. We don't get angry or irritable. We don't get depressed. We simply deal with whatever comes up, and it's always elegant. It's always clear that we're on top of things. And this is what Taurus really likes to show, is that it's on top of things. It can cope. And it can do that with a certain charm, a certain Venusian sense of, it's actually easy to do this. It can make the job look easy, something that other people can't do at all. Taurus will do very easily. And it has this sort of style that goes along with its Venus rulership. The rakish silk hat, for example, as you're going out there in the storm, most people would just make sure that they were warm and dry, but this guy's put on this little hat to make himself look good while he's coping with all these difficulties. So in this 15th degree of Taurus, we're reaching the end of the second half of Taurus, which has been about substantiation. So Taurus wants to make things substantial, know that is real, physical, earthy sign. The second half is about confirmation. So not only does Taurus want to know how to make it real, but it also wants to check out that it actually is real. It's lasting. It stands. It's a builder is really very strongly governed by gravity and storms and these kind of things impacting upon what he's building. And so has to make special effort just to do things right and then check that he's done it right. That's the overkill, shall we say, of Taurus to check that everything's right. And we look at confirmation in the next group of 15 degrees. So this first group of 15 degrees shows us how to express the essence of Taurus in the substantiation sense. This is substantial. This is how you do it. Power, effectiveness, application, job done.